princesses often get accused of being a bad influence on young girls, and one of the things that they usually get accused of is creating unrealistic expectations and making the viewers of their movies naive. And while I do not say that it is entirely untrue, I believe that there is not one but two types of naivety that can be developed if you watch Disney princess movies, and those two types of naivety, in my opinion, are not just different but opposite to one another. And for the sake of this video, I will analyze two plots of two Disney animated films, which are Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast, and I will try to analyze the two sets of conclusions that can be drawn from these films and two mindsets that can be tied to these different types of naivety. So let's start from Cinderella. Cinderella was a girl who was very kind and beautiful, and she was enslaved by her own relatives and lived as a servant in her own house. Despite all of the horrible treatment that she faced, she still remained very kind and even took care of her animal friends. And she never lost her optimism, she never lost her ability to dream, and once she showed up at the ball with the help of her fairy godmother, and the prince fell in love with her and she fell in love with the prince, and so he saved her from her horrible life, and they lived happily ever after, finding the true love in one another. So let's also summarize the plot of Beauty and the Beast, which is a bit different from Cinderella's story. So Belle was this young woman who sacrificed her own freedom to save her father, and she stayed as a captive in the Beast's castle. The Beast was actually an enchanted prince, so while she stayed in this castle, he began to fall in love with her, and under her influence he began to change. And he first changed internally because he used to be mean and aggressive, but he learned to love and he let her go. And then when she loved him back, he turned from a beast into a prince externally, and they probably got married and lived happily ever after. So these are these two stories. And what is the first set of conclusions that could be drawn from each one of them? The first type of naivety is something that I prefer to call the naivety of expectations, and that is when you take the plots of these stories, of this fairy tale, literally, and when you start to actually expect this literal outcome if you do the things that those princesses were doing. Well, for example, if a person sees the movie about Cinderella and take this plot literally and sees that in the end she married a literal prince, and that was a person who saved her from her poverty, who saved her from her horrible situation, and also was the love of her life, then it would be naive to turn it into an expectation for your real life. First of all, because not all people will actually be happy if they married literal princess, even if those princes were the exact copy of this Cinderella prince. But also because life is not a fairy tale, and people who might superficially resemble princes, I mean people with actual titles, actual royalty, or people who are just wealthy and influential or famous, these superficial things might resemble those traits of a prince, but sometimes those people who fit this definition superficially are very far away from what this prince from Cinderella actually symbolizes. And what is ironic is that sometimes it can take even a very cynical turn. For example, if someone is aiming at marrying someone who has money, who has influence, and when they begin to aim for that, they stop being like Cinderella and they start resembling one of her sisters, because Cinderella wasn't actually aiming for that. She didn't feel entitled to marry a prince. And for Cinderella, I believe, it was much more important that this prince was her true love, that he was a prince. So it might be also naive to actually expect someone to fit some superficial definitions of a prince or someone else when ignoring the more important things. So why was it such an epic happy ending for a Cinderella movie? Because the prince symbolized the fulfillment of her two needs, dreams, desires. She needed to be saved. She desperately needed to be saved, but she also needed love in her life because she didn't have anyone. She was enslaved by her relatives. She didn't have any real love. She didn't have any real family. And she found this love and this family in a prince. And these two desires, the desire to be saved and the desire to be loved, came together in this one person. And when it comes to Beauty and the Beast, then this unrealistic expectation can also be very dangerous, because when you see the story of Beauty and the Beast, you see how it turned out. Sometimes it can create a naive expectation that we can change someone who is wrong for us into someone who is right for us, that all we need is just to love them. However, it is very far from what Belle was actually doing and from what Belle was actually aiming at. Because Belle, she didn't stay in this castle in order to turn the beast into a prince. She stayed in this castle to save her father. Belle never sacrificed her standards because of her feelings for someone or because of her desire to change someone. She always stayed herself. She never let Beast get away with mistreating her. She never even began to fall in love with him before he began to change. So yes, and it can be very dangerous, because sometimes when you're afraid to lose someone in real life, you can end up losing yourself. And Belle didn't do that. So I believe that these two types of unrealistic expectations shouldn't be drawn from these movies, because you can't draw such conclusions from these films if you understand them accurately, if you remember the chronological order of events, if you understand the motivation of these people, if you understand the metaphors of what does the prince mean in Cinderella and what does this changed by love beast means in Beauty and the Beast. But it all gets tricky when we realize that these films were made for children, and children aren't always good at understanding metaphors. So it is important, I guess, that we can explain children what these films actually mean and help them not to turn these stories into their literal expectations. So what about the second type of naivety? I believe that this naivety, this type of naivety, can be drawn from the accurate understanding of these films. And this type of naivety is something that I call naivety by choice. And that is the naivety to be kind and to do the right things no matter the consequences. That is very true for Cinderella and Beauty, and I am very, very respectful of them, because these two princesses, they are not naive because of the lack of experience. They both had been through horrible things. They both were in horrible situations when they had to make very hard choices. They know how evil the world can be. They do not expect anything good just for being good, just for being kind. But they still choose to be kind, they still choose to be good, to be brave. Cinderella may be lacking some courage to stand up for herself, that is true, but she has the courage to stay kind. And I cannot imagine the situation when Cinderella, let's say she had never met a prince and she stayed there forever. She remained a slave for the rest of her life. I can't imagine her thinking to herself, well, I was kind and that was all for nothing. nobody saved me. I shouldn't have been kind. I should have tried to poison them all. I mean, I was cooking for them every day and I probably wouldn't have gotten caught. And even if I did, would it be much worse than living your whole life like that? I can't imagine her having this kind of regrets. Because I believe, that is how I prefer to see Cinderella, I believe that Cinderella understood that being kind, it's not that much about other people and how they respond to this kindness, not about the outcome that you have from these interactions with other people. That kindness is about your own dignity, it's about not losing it. Because that was more important, doing the right thing was more important. So I believe that Cinderella had a courage to stay kind, no matter what happened. As for Belle, I think that she had so much courage that is actually hard to believe. She stayed in this castle to save her father. She was prepared for the worst. I mean, yes, of course she did hesitate. She did take some moment to make this decision, but she couldn't know how it would end. She didn't know that this beast was an enchanted prince. What she knew was that he could have killed her, he could have tortured her, but she still did what she believed was the best thing to do, because she knew that she had to fight for her father's life, because she had a chance to survive there, and her father didn't at that moment. So that is what she did. And because of her courage, I think, when she felt like she had nothing to lose anymore, probably was one of the reasons why she was such a big influence on the beast, because, well, I guess when you are prepared to die to save the person that you love, then you actually aren't afraid of anything and you can be yourself. And because the beast saw her and he saw that she wouldn't let him mistreat her, and because he saw how principled she was, I think that was one of the reasons why he could change just watching her, and that's one of the reasons why he fell in love with her in the end. But she didn't count on that. That is the thing. She had so much courage. I wish I had so much courage in my real life. And that is the second kind of naivety. And of course we are not perfect, and I'm not saying that there is this very clear division between people, that some people are just naive in their expectations and some people have the courage to be naive by choice. And I believe that we all have both of those types in our character. But I also believe that this second type of naivety is something that is worth pursuing, because I really believe that the world would be better if there would be more people who resemble Cinderella and Beauty. And if you wish that the world had more people like that, then what other choice do you have than trying to become one? And while I'm not saying that Disney princesses are the ultimate ideal of humans, I just say that those movies are what makes me believe that it is possible to live out these ideals, that it is possible to be kind, to do the right things, no matter what are the consequences. And that is probably the reason why at the age of 27 I really like Disney movies, and I think that I like them more and more each year, because it really helps me fight this cynical part of myself, I guess, that could be developed through other media and just from encountering the evil of this world. Because these movies, they just remind me how much better and how much beautiful it is to just be kind and don't care about the consequences. So that is probably what I've got to say. Maybe I will talk about it later. It was more of an analytical video today, nothing practical. But I really hope that you've enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments what you think and how many types of naivety do you count in your real life. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.